Hi, everyone. This is a little booster lecture on list comprehensions. So what is a list comprehension? It is a way to create a list. So one way down here, we've got our list, a list. We could say it's equal to the empty list, and then we can print it, or just a list. And we see that it's the empty list. We can also create it with some elements inside. So 5, 6, -32. And this is our list. But what if we wanted to create a list programmatically? We didn't want to type out everything. Well, let's say we want to create a list of the first 10 even numbers. We could say 10 evens is equal to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, etc. But there's a good chance that we mess this up, or like, who even knows, is this even 10, 3, 6? See, we only got 8. It's very difficult and not readable to do it this way. But using a list comprehension, we can do something like this. We could say 10 evens is equal to x for x in range 1, x times 2 for x in range 0, 10. And then, so the syntax of this loop, or this list comprehension, is we have brackets denoting that we're creating a list. And then we have some variable for, this is where we define the variable name, in, and then our iteratable. Here, the iteratable is this range, 0 to 10. So it's going to give us 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. So 10, but we don't get the actual number 10, stops at 9. And then we multiply x by 2 to make sure it's an even number. So the first one we'd expect to be 0. Second one is going to be x is 1 times 2 is 2. Third one, x is 2 times 2 is 4. So when we print out 10 evens, 0 through 18 going up by 2, which are the first 10 even numbers, depending if you count 0 as even. Take a moment to think about how we would shift this to not include 0 and go all the way up to 20. So we're going to small change. Going to go from range 1 to 11. There we go. Now we've got 2 through 20. So list comprehensions are useful where you know you want to create a new list from some iteratable. To illustrate that, let's create a function. We'll call it square with for loop. And it's going to take in a list. We'll call it in list. This is going to return a list. Square with for loop, we want it to square, return a new list with every element in list squared. In list is the input list, and then it's going to return a list with every element in the input list squared. So how would we do that with the for loop? This is actually a good practice problem if you want to take some time to think about how you would solve this, and then I will code it up. So we define our out list, it's equal to the empty list, and then for element in list, out list dot append L squared. And finally, we return. down here to the if name to main. Just write some assert tests. We'll assert that square with for loop of the list 0, 3, -1 is going to be equal to the list 0 squared is 0, 3 squared is 9, -1 squared is 1. And let's just run this and make sure that works. Awesome. And then to make sure that our tests are running, let's try changing one of these to be the wrong value. Let's say -1 squared is -1. So now we expect this to throw an error. This is a good thing to do to make sure that your tests are actually running, because remember, you get no output from a correct test. Awesome. We got an assertion error, so that means that our tests are actually running. So when we fix it, we now have high confidence that the tests, we know they're both running and not outputting anything, which means that it is correct. So that should be a good enough test for now. Now, if we wanted to convert this to be a list comprehension, I'm just going to copy it since most of it is repeated. Square with list comp. Okay, the doc string and function signature, all of this stays exactly the same. But what we need to change is how we're actually creating the outlist. So using a list comprehension, we need our brackets, and we'll just say L in for L in list. So now we're saying create a new list with create a new list with each element for element in list. This stuff can be complicated, so don't worry if it doesn't make sense right away. So right now, we're not actually doing anything to this element. We're just saying we have our outlist and we're creating a new list that has each element of the outlist. So this is making a copy. So to convince you of that, when we run it, we get an assertion error here. Let's actually print this so we can see what's going on here. Print square with list comp. And we see it printed 0, 3, -1, which is exactly our input list. So we've successfully copied it. Now, this element, the one after the for, is where you define your variable. The after the in is where you define the list you're iterating over, or your input iteratable. And then here is where we actually say we want to deal with it. So if we want to create the square of everything, then we can take our element, multiply it by 2, and this is what the elements of our new list are going to be. So we run this now, we get 0, 9, 1, which is the correct output here, and our assert statement passes, no more assertion error. So just looking at one more time the mapping from a for loop to our list comprehension. We have for L in list, and that is found exactly right here. And then rather than appending it to our outlist, this L times 2, we just put whatever we want to do with it right here. So it's really a formulaic mapping, and you can reference back to this at any time. I'll post this on Canvas. But this is just a slightly more concise way, just like when we went from while loops to for loops for iterating and not having to keep track of these variables outside here. This list comprehension is a cleaner and easier way, or cleaner and more readable way to create a new list. All right, that is this little micro lecture. I'll see you all in class on Wednesday.